And for more on this, I'm joined here in Washington by Jack Bobo. He's the CEO of Futurity, which helps businesses with food sustainability. Welcome to the program.
Delighted to be here.
So I want to start by just trying to gauge, how does China's food waste problem compare with the rest of the world? And where is it particularly bad?
Well, actually, the problem in China is really a microcosm of the problem that we have in all parts of the world. Similar to what the FAO was saying, that a third of all food is wasted before it reaches the consumer in most parts of the developing world. But in the Western countries, the United States and Europe, a third of food is wasted post-consumer. So food waste is a problem in every corner of the world. And it's really dramatic. You think a third of all food created ends up in a waste pile somewhere. And, that's deforestation, that's people that could be eating who are not getting eaten, so it's impacting food security as well.
So, the way you've explained it, does then the amount of food waste correlate with the nation's stage of development? Or is there some sort of also a cultural component to this? Because, I remember growing up, I wasn't allowed to leave the table until every last grain of rice was on my plate was done. So, to hear about food waste is quite an interesting phenomenon these days.
Yeah, so in China, in the run-up to this program, it was talking about 18 million tons of food that are wasted coming from catering and restaurants and things like that in China. But 35 million metric tons of food is wasted in terms of grains that just never reach the table at all. And so it's happening at different points along the supply chain. So in most developing countries, it's well before it reaches the consumer. Consumers in India and many African countries are very, very careful with the food they have. But in the United States and Europe, people are much more likely to leave something in the refrigerator, not check the best by date, and they're a little worried if it's safe, and so they toss it.
So let's go then to the impact of this, because how detrimental is food waste to the environment? I mean, we are just talking about climate change all the time now. There must be some huge impact of food production, distribution, packaging, all of that.
Well, agricultural production is 30 to 40% of all greenhouse gas emissions. So it's almost as big as the energy sector, and it's bigger than anything else. So think about that. If it's 30% of all greenhouse gas production and 1/3 of it is wasted, we could eliminate 10% of all emissions tomorrow if we just got rid of food waste, which is food that nobody's getting to eat anyway.
Okay, so how do we do that? What are some of the best practices?
So the answer is going to be different if we're talking about, a developing country like China, where they really need supply chains and they need storage facilities and all sorts of things that already exist in the United States and the UK and France and places like that. But it's really when it comes to the consumer where we need to turn to behavior, because 40% of food waste, for example, in the United States is post-consumer. So one thing we need to do is education. We need people to understand best by dates are really about quality. They're not about food safety. And so just because something has expired doesn't mean it's unsafe. It may not taste as good, but it's probably still safe to eat. So that's one area. The other is when you're going to the restaurant. One of the things that my family and I do, I have 2 kids, and we only ever order 3 meals. So for the 4 of us, which means I never actually get to order anything. And so, we find that 3 meals is actually perfectly sufficient for three adults. My kids are for 4 adults. And then we have room for dessert. And so there are nudges that you can make to your own behavior, setting aside part of the portion to take home with you and other things, because cleaning our plates is actually leading to the obesity epidemic, which is the future problem that we're all going to have.